Are you considering a mortgage in Spain, but you don't know where to start? Well, you're in the right place. This is a NUSUN Network. We are in Marbella, and I'm Cassidy, the owner of NUSUN Realty, where we help international buyers like you find their first dream home. Today I'm joined by Mike Brady. He is our finance and mortgage specialist, and he is here for a second time, and we're going to be going right into the details of how you can get a mortgage and any changes that we can expect all we have in 2026. Mike, welcome back again.
Thank you very much for having me here today, Chris.
Yeah, look, we had loads of people liking our posts, and I think one of the shorts actually had like 150,000 people who viewed it. Loads of saves, loads of comments. So I thought I really need to get this guy back on again. And plus we're in 2026, so there'll probably some changes or some new things or different products that we can go into. But first of all, just reintroduce yourself for those who maybe were crazy and missed the last one, and tell us about who you are and about your company and what it is you do.
Okay, so my name's Mike Brady. I work for Finance Consulting Group. We're a bespoke white glove mortgage advisory service based in Malaga.
Okay.
We work with mostly expats, UK, UAE, USA, Ireland, who want to get mortgages to finance property purchases here in Spain.
Okay, and you've been doing this for a while, right?
Yeah, I've been working for this company for the last 2 years.
Okay.
The company is based on the experience of its founder, Alberto Bertacci, who's been in the business for 22 years. So we're backed up by a lot of banking experience.
Awesome. And just in terms of the pro, I mean, first of all, I'd like to just go back into a little bit about the process. I know we've got it in an earlier podcast, but just for those who are new to this, can you just advise about the process here and maybe some differences that might maybe compared to maybe the UK, for example, or different countries like that? Maybe just about that process.
Okay, well, the process here in Spain is still extremely analog, the process for getting a mortgage. So whereas in other countries you might be able to do everything digitally, straight with the bank, here in-person relationships still matter. It's very much whose door you can go knocking on to get the paperwork looked at, rather than just uploading digital documents and forgetting about where they're going. So it's let's say it that way, that Spain is very much it's a different kettle of fish when it comes to mortgage applications. So you might be used to digital processes, online processes, not so much here in Spain. You've got to interact with the bank itself. Sometimes you have to sign reams of paperwork that are actually physically printed out and then filed at the bank itself.
So just in terms of that, you mentioned the paperwork. What sort of document, or if someone was wanting to get a mortgage, right? So let's imagine they found the property, or ideally they've done it before it, right? But where would they even start in the process? So I'm assuming that ideally they'd come to you, but what would they need to prepare? What information would you need to make sure that they've got for it? Is there any sort of key criteria that should be met?
Well, what we always advise our clients is that pre-planning is key. So ideally you want to be thinking about financing your purchase before you find a place to buy.
Yeah.
You can go to the banks through us and get pre-approved mortgages. Okay. So you go to the seller of the property with a commitment from the bank to grant you a certain amount of money as a mortgage loan. Okay. So that puts you in a pretty strong position to negotiate property purchases.
Okay. So you can do that in advance then?
You can do that in advance. This is where using a broker such as ourselves is a big advantage, because we can go straight to the banks and get pre-approvals. Whereas if you were to go to a bank by yourself, you very often get the cold shoulder from the branch manager. They say, have you found a house to buy? What, you haven't found a house? We don't want to look at your case yet. We don't have time for this. So we know the people to go to get mortgages pre-approved.
Right, okay. And for that pre-approval process, what would you expect the client to have or to prepare? Or maybe, I don't know, what type of passport I'm assuming passport, but any other documentation you would have to see to get that pre-approval?
Sure. Basic documentation is ID documents, so passport, and very important is the NIE number, which is a number that you have to have in Spain if you're going to be signing official documents.
Okay.
This number can take anything up to 4 or 5 weeks to get hold of, just because you have to wait so long for an appointment to get it.
Okay.
So we can walk clients through getting the process of getting an NIE number. Then we ask for things like 3 months worth of bank statements,
Okay.
tax returns, employment contracts. If they run their own business, then we have to go into all of the paperwork related to the business. So articles of incorporation, company accounts, corporate tax returns, dividend payments. It's very common in the UK for people to run their business and take a minimum salary and then pay themselves with dividends.
Yeah.
That's a kind of alien structure for Spanish banks.
Okay.
So we have to explain it to the banks very carefully exactly how they're taking their income. And once it's all explained and clarified, then they're quite happy to accept applications. But you do have to meticulously document this process.
Right.
So the paperwork requirements are quite cumbersome. This is where we come in to help you through it. So because we know exactly what banks are going to ask for if you're from different countries. So we know what paperwork you need to get from the UAE, the paperwork from the UK, Austria, Czech Republic. We've worked with all of these countries a lot. So we know what to ask for and we know how to present it to the banks.
Got you. I think that's important because it's even getting the NIE. Some people might not even think they need that. They might just think, "Oh, I've seen this property. I'm going to try and get a mortgage on it."
Sure.
And that 4 weeks might be the deal breaker for getting that property.
It's something that comes as a surprise to most new clients that I talk to, because people are aware that they should get the financing sorted out first. And then one of our first requirements is to get the NIE number. And first of all, so they say to me, "What's that?
Yes.
How do I get it?" And then it's a lengthy process of either taking a flight to Spain to attend an appointment at a police station or trying to get it at the local Spanish embassy or consulate.
Yeah.
So it's this would be one of my recommendations as well.
Get that first.
Yeah, get it first, or at least think about how you're going to get it before you start looking for property.
So what is obviously, I'm imagining, right, you've got the information, they've got the NIE, they've got all their documents. You would probably do an initial inspection to make sure that would be right. That would maybe, in terms of their finances and everything, I'm assuming you'd probably check that might meet the criteria.
Sure. We're registered mortgage underwriters here in Spain, as well as a brokerage company.
Okay.
That means that we can, if you've never heard of a mortgage underwriter before, it means that we can actually take the documents, look at them according to the criteria that Spanish banks would use to approve a mortgage. So as soon as we see the full set of documents, we can get a very good idea of whether the mortgage is going to be approved or not. Mm-hmm. So we look at the documents, we give, we wouldn't call it a pre-approval because it's not, but we say, okay, this guy's got 95% chance of a successful application.
Okay.
So we can, that's another advantage of going through us. We can give you a very good idea of whether or not you're going to be able to get the mortgage in a very short space of time. After that, we take the paperwork to the banks to get their seal of approval on the application. They'll say to us, "Yep, the application looks good. We probably need to document some more things, but we can go ahead with it."
Right, okay. And what is that typical timeline? If you're happy, you're saying, okay, it's 95%, you take it to the banks. At what point does the person go, right, I know that I can get a mortgage approval? What is that typical timeline?
Then the thing that takes longest normally is getting the paperwork together.
Right.
So from submitting the paperwork to getting some kind of a pre-approval, it's normally about 3 to 4 weeks.
Right, okay.
But if it takes the client a long time to get the paperwork together, sometimes they can take months to get a certain piece of paper, just because they're not prioritizing it on their end. They haven't found a property yet, so they're not thinking too much about the finance side. So it's very much, I give them the list of documents that they need to get. I'm always on the end of the phone or the email if they need any help with it, but it's very much that the ball's in their court. They need to actually do the legwork to get their documentation together before we can submit everything to the bank. We like to give banks a full set of documents so that they're not coming back to us straight away with requests for basic stuff. So
Yeah.
we present the full set. Our partners at the banks know that we're trustworthy in that sense, that we're not going to present them with incomplete applications.
Yeah.
So we're not wasting their time.
Of course.
So as soon as we've got everything, we go to the bank, and then the risk analysis process can take 3 or 4 weeks.
Wow. So I mean, obviously we're talking about getting the NIE, that can take 4 weeks, sometimes longer.
Yes.
Depends, right?
This basically depends on when you get an appointment at the police station.
Yeah.
Because if you're lucky, you can go onto the system and see the appointments available for the next day. If you happen to be in the area, you can get it straight away. But sometimes, particularly in August, September, waits for appointments can be 5 or 6 weeks.
Yeah, exactly. But what I'm saying though is you've got that, but probably in parallel of going through that process, you'd be as well just getting your documentation together as well. You probably wouldn't wait until you get your NIE before you get your documentation, would you? Because I'm just thinking about that's
absolutely.
Like that's 5 weeks, and you got to wait another 4 weeks.
We can do this in parallel because if we've got all of the rest of the documentation together, we can go to the bank and they'll say, okay, the NIE is missing, and say, okay, well, the appointment's on this date, so it's going to arrive very soon.
Got you.
So
you don't have to do all that. You can still do stuff in parallel.
You can do stuff in parallel. You don't need to do one and then the other.
I'm just thinking about the timelines because obviously I sell real estate, and if someone was coming to me and saying, I'm going to find out in 9 weeks, but bloody hell, it's
sure.
Well, this impact a deal, right?
It's a very stressful time, or it can be a very stressful time for buyers because what we see a lot is they fall in love with a property before having got the finance in place. So they sign a reservation agreement, then they sign the earnest money contract, which is a 10% deposit.
Yeah.
But in essence, they're putting down a 10% deposit without knowing whether or not they can get financing or not.
Yeah.
So it's often to and fro with the buyers and the sellers saying, do we have the financing yet? Can we sign this contract? And normally, so this is what we try to, on behalf of our clients, we try to expedite the process as much as possible. If we know we've got a 10% deposit contract waiting, then we'll push the paperwork through as fast as we can with our partners.
Yeah. And how many, for those that might not know about the Spanish banks, how many banks are there typically that you would deal with? What would you say the main ones are?
Well, let's say there's a huge number of banks and building societies in Spain. We know the ones that are most likely to approve applications from certain countries.
Okay.
So we take the paperwork. We try to get as many quotes as possible from different banks. But if we know a certain bank, there's only one bank, for example, that's very favourable to, or looks very favourably upon applications from Dubai, from the United Arab Emirates.
Right.
So we know that we can take this paperwork straight to that particular bank. We'll also take it to a couple of others that also grant mortgages to people from Dubai, but almost with the knowledge beforehand that they don't offer the best rates as the first bank we go to.
Yeah.
So we offer a comparison. But we know the banks that we go straight to.
Right. Okay. So you pick. So based on the circumstances of the person, that might help you get a view of actually I can take it to these banks, or this one's a bit more favourable. And then I suppose in that you're presenting options, right? You're presenting options to your client.
Sure.
Based on what you get back.
It's not very common, but sometimes we see. There's only one bank, for example, that's prepared to accept the client. So if the client's from a country, let's say the Czech Republic, for example, they're earning in Czech krona, which is a obviously it's outside the Eurozone. So there's the conditions that the bank's willing to grant them is going to be very different to someone earning a salary in euros or pounds, for example, because there's a lot more currency risk that the bank takes on.
If, for example, you're not from Spain, you're from abroad, you want to buy a property here and get a mortgage. What is the sort of loan to value? How much are the banks willing to normally lend?
For someone from the UK, for example, we can often get a loan to value of between 70 and 75%.
Okay.
So you've got to put down in that case 25 to 30% of your own money, plus all of the expenses involved in the operation. So we're talking notary fees, register fees,
lawyers, yeah.
and taxes as well. The big T word.
Yeah.
So taxes on property purchases in Andalusia are 7% of the value of the property.
Yeah.
But this is something else, because when people approach us, they're thinking about financing the property for the first time, and they hear they have to pay an additional 7% in taxes, which is not covered by the mortgage.
It's not.
So you normally have to bring quite a big chunk of your own cash over to Spain if you're thinking about a property purchase.
Yeah, I mean, I normally tell them, I normally always say, you know, if it's a resale property or a second-hand property, you know, have all in your mind sort of 10%, so that's 7% tax, and then your 3% for your other costs, notary.
Sure. As a rule of thumb,
but if it's an off-plan project, it's brand new, it's never been lived in, then I normally say about 13%, because you've got a 10% tax for the off-plan project.
Yes, with off-plan properties, you have to pay 10%.
10%.
It's 10% VAT. So if you're buying the property to run as a business, like a holiday let, you can then claim back the VAT against other expenses.
Yeah, for the holiday let. Yeah, but just a normal residential property, then 10%, and that can be a big hit.
Yeah.
Some even the 7%, you know, as you say, some people don't think about that.
Sure, but it's all about planning ahead. It's about getting in contact with people like us and asking the questions. So forewarned is forearmed. If you know you're going to have to get together this chunk of cash for the property purchase, then you can start thinking about that first, and then you can adjust your budget. You can adjust your expectations as to what property you can afford.
Yeah, I mean, we mentioned the UK there, for example, 25 or 30%. Is Ireland different? Because Ireland's in Europe, right? So is that different, or is it quite similar?
Ireland's quite similar. The countries that we get a lower loan to value for are places like Dubai.
Okay.
So particularly people earning in dirham from Dubai, because there's a currency risk associated with the purchase for the bank.
Right.
They'll only accept loan to values of maybe 60 or 65%.
Right, okay.
In certain cases, we've got one particularly good banking partner that will offer 75% loan to value for clients from Dubai as well.
Right.
So in the first instance, we go to them for our Dubai clients, because 75% loan to value for a foreigner buying in Spain is excellent.
Yeah, it is. I mean, normally I always say to a client 70%. I normally just say 70%, but 75% is fantastic.
I would say never promise a client 75%.
I never say it.
We normally try to under promise and over deliver in that sense. So I'll say, okay, standard is maybe 68 to 70%,
right,
and then I can almost surprise them with the 75% in some cases.
A bonus. It's extra money in their pocket.
It's extra money in their pocket. Well, people buying in Spain, they want to borrow as much as possible, because interest rates at the moment here are slightly lower than the European average. So
I want to get into that actually. So at the moment, right? Because obviously last podcast we had you on, we're talking about this, but what are we seeing now? Where we are now? What are we seeing in the products that are being offered? For buying a residential property, what is the interest rates that we're seeing?
Well, the average interest rate in Spain at the moment for a 20-year fixed term mortgage, so you pay the same amount every month over 20 years. It's around 2.9 or 3%. Right. This is for Spanish buyers. Okay. So foreign buyers sometimes take a bit of a hit on the interest rate. So we're looking at rates for foreign buyers at the moment between 3.1 and 3.5%. What Spanish banks often offer packages whereby you contract things like home insurance, life insurance, and other products like current accounts through the bank, and they'll give you a discount on the mortgage interest rate. So something like just holding a current account with the bank can give you a discount of up to 0.4 or 0.5% on the interest rate. Okay. So banks like to try to they like to lock you in. They like to lock you in with their mortgage, their current account, and their products. So they'll make some quite attractive deals for you to.
All right. So when you mentioned the rates potentially for UK buyers, was that including these products that you've mentioned?
I normally give them the rate without these products. So let's say a starting rate of about 3.5% fixed over 20 years, which you can then reduce by taking the products offered by the bank.
Okay, so it's extra money again.
It's extra money again. And these are products that you normally have to take out anyway, because by law, if you've got a mortgage in Spain, you need to have some kind of home insurance. Right. So the home insurance needs to cover the amount of the mortgage if anything happens to you.
Okay.
Sorry, if anything happens to the
To the
property.
property. And just in terms of like home insurance and things like that, did you say that the mortgage, so it's legally, but does the mortgage depend on you getting home insurance in, or are they completely separate?
The mortgage will require you to have some kind of home insurance. You don't have to take it out with the bank itself,
Okay,
but the banks require you to have an insurance policy in place that will pay them back
of course.
if something happens to the property.
Of course. And can you help with that process of maybe getting home insurance, or is that something they have to do?
We can help with that as well. Very often the bank will give you a quote for home insurance along with the mortgage because it's part of their process to reduce the interest rate.
Yep.
So they'll say the insurance policy costs €500 a year, and if you take it out with us, you get a discount on the interest rate that we charge you.
Right. Okay. Okay. That's really good to know. And so that's that process. So they've got it. They've got the mortgage. Hopefully, then they can get the property. But in terms of the process with you helping them, at what part of the process are you in, and when do you sort of step away from that? Is it just when they get the mortgage? I'm just trying to understand
Well,
that process.
we like to set ourselves apart by providing a bit bespoke white glove service to people wanting to get a mortgage in Spain, because plenty of other brokers just set up the relationship between you and the bank and then step back and you never hear from them again. We like to go along with the clients every step of the way. So we collect all of the paperwork with them, we submit it to the bank, but then after that there's a whole process that involves going to the notary and signing the documents. So I'll personally go along with our clients to the notary appointments. If necessary, I'll translate for them.
Oh wow.
So
Okay.
I often end up putting my signature on the title deed saying that it's been interpreted into English for them.
Oh, fantastic.
So we offer that as part of our service as well. If you're looking at another mortgage brokerage company other than ourselves, you should bear in mind that there's often additional costs associated with the notary appointments, such as interpreting, because the notary requires you to be aware of the content of the document that you're signing in your own language.
Okay. But you can help with that.
I can help with that, and I don't only help with that, we include it as part of our service. So our fee includes interpreting services.
Wow, excellent. And obviously we've covered mortgage, just standard mortgages. But is there any other products that people can look at? I'm thinking things like bridging, or there is wider finance products that might be more beneficial for people depending on their timing. Some of them might not want a long-term mortgage straight away. They might want to get some bridging, and I'm thinking UK terms. They get bridging finance. They can get a property quickly. They can do it up and maybe sell it, or they can refinance it. But I'm trying to understand if there's any products similar to that in Spain.
We've actually made a new partner agreement with a company that does private equity loans.
Okay.
So it's like they provide bridging finance for projects exactly like those ones. So it's very often we had some clients recently who were looking to purchase a new property, and they wanted a bridging loan to fund the purchase while they were selling their old property.
Right.
So this is a perfect use case for something like a bridging loan. You take a chunk of money back to buy one property or the other, or even both of them, until such a time as you don't need the money anymore because you've sold the first property.
Right.
So we can broker these agreements as well. The interest rates tend to be more expensive than a mortgage because it's a shorter term loan, but for a lot of people it's a very capital efficient way of working.
Okay. So you've got access to those types of products.
We've got access to those types of products, and also we've got access through our partner to people who provide much smaller loans than you'd normally get through bridging finance, because bridging finance is normally for loans €1 million or more.
Right,
They're not
okay.
really interested in looking at loans under €1 million.
Oh wow.
But our partners are willing to work on a smaller scale, so they'll look at loans of 100,000 or 150,000 if someone needs that.
Because sometimes that's all you need, right? So we've spoke about mortgages. We've spoke a bit about bridging. Is there any other sort of products that are out there for people? I remember the last time you were on, we spoke about bare ownership and these other
Their
things.
ownership. Yeah. There's a big problem in Spain that people don't necessarily realize, that it's very difficult to get equity out of a property here.
Yeah.
So in somewhere like the UK, if you've got a property without a mortgage, you can remortgage it almost in a few clicks on your computer, and you've suddenly got £100,000 in your bank account. That's not the case here in Spain.
Okay.
You can only get a remortgage in certain situations. Like if you want to refurbish your property, or if you want to use the money to buy another property,
Right.
banks will be willing to look at remortgaging arrangements. But they're very specific cases. So a lot of people buy property in Spain and then they're almost trapped in it. They're nearing retirement. They're looking for some way to get equity out of their property. One of the options that's on the market is bare ownership agreement.
Okay.
So a bare ownership agreement is you pair the property owner with an investor who puts up a certain percentage of the value of the property in exchange for future ownership of that property once the current owner is no longer around. So it's like the current owner gets lifetime usage rights of the property,
Okay.
and the investor gets maybe a 50% or a 30% discount on the value of the property, depending on the owner's life expectancy.
Right. Okay.
So the investor puts up money up front. The property owner's happy because they get a big lump sum that they can enjoy while still living in the house with lifetime usage rights.
All
So
right.
it can be a very beneficial arrangement.
So for bare ownership, they can still remain in the house. They've got the money in their pocket as well, and the investor has got the property at the end of that tenure.
Yep, exactly that. And because they've still got ownership rights over the property, they can still do things like rent it out.
Oh, okay.
So
they can still do that.
So if it's a holiday home, for example, they can still get an income from it by renting it out. They've had the lump sum arrangement, so the property is no longer theirs to pass on to their descendants,
Yeah.
but they're enjoying a lump sum of cash for whatever they need.
And they don't need to think about capital gains and all this, or inheritance tax and all this stuff, because
Well, some people like their ownership arrangements just because of that, because they don't want their heirs fighting over the Spanish property.
yeah,
So
exactly, it takes that pressure away from them. But then you also mentioned there as well about releasing equity, and I know you said it's difficult, but there is circumstances. I think you said if they were to buy, for example, they were going to refurbish the property,
Yeah.
potentially, or if they were wanting to get an additional property, then there might be options there. I think that's quite a good thing, because then it does help you to, if you're wanting to expand your portfolio, you could pull some of that money out and put it into another property. Is that what you're saying?
yeah, exactly right. Spanish mortgage law allows for those cases. So
Right.
so banks are allowed to grant remortgages to people wanting to buy another property. So if you finish paying off your mortgage on the first one, then you can go for the next property that you might want to buy as an investment or a rental property.
Right, okay.
So-
What about the scenario, right, where you buy a property, cash, you refurbish the property, bring the price up, and then you get would you then be able to get the mortgage on that at the higher value?
You mean a remortgage?
Well,
Or
yes. Well, actually, so let's just say, imagine you get, for example, if you were going to get, yeah, if you get a mortgage, so you're going to buy a mortgage, get a mortgage on a property up front. It needs a lot of work. You refurbish it all. It then, I know in the UK you can do this. You then get a higher value on it. Could you refinance that property with a new mortgage product at a higher price, meaning you pull some money back out? Is that possible here in Spain?
It's a very difficult thing to do in Spain, because once you've got a mortgage on a property, trying to extend the mortgage is difficult. You can extend the mortgage if you want to refurbish the property.
Right.
So you get the mortgage to add value to it.
But if you already add value to it, then you can't refinance it.
Well, then you want to think about taking money out of it to buy another property.
Yeah.
So
okay.
You then, if it's mortgage free, you have to get an official valuation survey of the property done. So that would reflect the increase in value, and then the mortgage will be granted based on a percentage of that value.
Got you. So, but you've just said something there as well. So let's imagine you've got the property, you've had it you've got a mortgage on it, you've had it for 15 years, for example. That property is going to be worth a lot more. But you might still have your mortgage. You might still be paying your mortgage off. Could you refinance it at that point to get another property, even though it's got the mortgage on it still?
Banks don't like to refinance something that's already got a mortgage on it.
Right. Okay.
So any kind of refinancing agreement normally involves the original mortgage being paid off in some way.
Right. So that's a difference then from what we have in the UK, for example.
Correct.
That's really interesting. People need to understand this stuff, right?
Well, normally you fall in love with a Spanish property. You go through the mortgage application process. You sign all of the documents, and you've got this wonderful beachside villa in Marbella. And then time goes by, and no one's ever told you that it's so difficult to get equity out of property in Spain. So your options are very much limited to either selling it, capital gains tax, because you've seen property prices increase by a huge amount here over the last few years. So capital gains tax, other implications on selling the property, and then what can we do? Okay, we can refurbish it. We can get another loan for a refurbishment, or we can invest in another property by getting a mortgage on the first. So options are kind of limited, and people don't often think about that when they're buying a property in the first instance.
Right. Okay. No, it's just an interesting thought, because I do know I know a lot of investors in the UK. They will refinance their existing mortgage based on a new valuation, but here you can only really sell it.
What we can do is take a mortgage to another bank. So if interest rates go down, and it's more attractive for you to take your mortgage and use another bank's product,
right?
Then that's absolutely something you can do in Spain. You can, let's say you're paying 4.5% on your mortgage, and there's another bank offering 3.5%.
Okay.
You can do the calculation, and it's very much worth your while to close down one mortgage and get the new one.
Also, you can switch it.
You can switch it, but it's very difficult in that case to increase the value of the mortgage. You're in essence just changing the lender with exactly the same terms.
The same terms. Interesting. And have you got any views about, maybe, because obviously there's a lot of stuff happening right now in the world, as we've mentioned, obviously currency issues and everything else, but have you seen any, or expecting any major changes in banking opportunities or banking products here in Spain based on where we are right now in the world?
The answer that springs to mind straight away is the fuel crisis.
Yeah, that's another one.
So, but that's it's got it's a bit of a domino effect. So, fuel prices rise, food prices rise, cost of living increases. So, with cost of living increases, that's inflation, it's interest rates. So, these are the sort of things that more global instability often leads to higher interest rates on the market. So we're also seeing quite an influx of buyers coming in from Dubai, almost impulse buyers. I followed the forums online quite closely, people discussing this sort of stuff. And the number of people who've been affected by the conflict in Dubai, in Iran, and maybe they haven't even seen rockets land anywhere near their apartment complex in Dubai, but they've been frightened away from Dubai, and they're looking for a bit of a safe haven. A lot of them are turning to Spain because you get similar standard of living, similar weather, and then there's a lot of relationships between Dubai and Spain in terms of investor opportunities. So yes, we're seeing a lot of people contact us from Dubai at the moment, kind of almost, some of them almost in a panic. Okay. They say, we need to get out of Dubai right now. What are our options in Spain? Yeah.
I mean, I must admit, I've noticed a lot more inquiries coming from there. Even in Iran, there's a lot of Iranians.
Oh, really?
My friend here, he likes to go to the casino. Mm-hmm. He's a poker player, and he said he's seen a lot more Iranian people in the casinos now. I remember with Ukraine, and when that first started, we had loads of people from Ukraine, but loads of people from Poland, because it was quite on the border. They were then coming over, loads of Polish inquiries and Polish buyers, but I think we're going to start to maybe see a lot more people from Dubai and different countries like that that are going to be looking towards Marbella.
Well, and all of these people need to be aware that it's possible for them to get mortgages in Spain, because I was talking to a colleague in Dubai the other day. They told me that a lot of property in Dubai is just bought in cash. So it's one of the countries with the lowest number of mortgages per capita in the world.
Yeah.
So they don't necessarily realize or even think about mortgages when going elsewhere. So it's very possible for people from Dubai earning in dirham to get a mortgage in Spain. So they can be very capital efficient with your savings in Dubai. It can be very attractive for people not to take huge sums of money out of Dubai and to buy property in Spain for tax reasons.
Yeah. Yeah. And how would, if people are wanting to understand, get in touch with you, Mike, and talk about a mortgage, and how would they get in touch with you? What's the process?
Okay. Well, the easiest way to get in touch with us is through our website, which I've been working very hard on it recently. It's a brand new look, brand new site. It's financeconsulting.es.
Okay.
All of our contact details are on the site. Lots of information about getting mortgages in Spain as well. And we've introduced a new digital application process. So the back office side is still very analog in terms of our relationships with Spanish banks.
Yeah.
But we're trying to make it easier on the client side to provide us with all of their information and upload all of their documents. So instead of going backwards and forwards with emails and text messages, it's all on one centralized platform. So if you can also use our website to get a bit of an idea about how much you can borrow. There's a calculator section. You put in your income, the amount of monthly payments you've already got for other mortgages and loans, the term of the mortgage you're interested in, and it'll give you an approximation of the value of the property you can afford and how much mortgage you could be granted.
Well, that's really helpful.
So yeah, it's very helpful. It's a little tool, but it gives you an initial idea of the numbers that you're talking about, and it'll also break it down for you, the 25% or 30% deposit you need to put down, and how much you're going to have to pay in notary fees and taxes.
And is this on your website?
It's on the website. It's financeconsulting.es/calculator.
Yeah, but we might need to talk about maybe getting that calculator onto my website as well.
Well, it's slightly outside the scope of our podcast, but we've also got a new partner referral system.
Okay.
So as part of the partner referral system, we've got a button that I can give you to put in a blog or on your website.
Yeah.
And the button tracks clicks coming from your website to my website.
Okay.
So there's kind of electronic referrals, e-referrals.
I think just for me, but it just helps if I can make my clients' life a little bit easier.
Sure.
And they can go on, they can use a calculator. If I can make their life easier, I will. Chat after this.
This is my whole idea. It's like we want to be as useful as possible.
Yeah.
So put the calculator on the website. There's no guarantee of what you're actually going to get as a loan, but it gives you an idea of the numbers involved.
Which I think is important.
Yeah.
Right, awesome. Listen, thank you so much for joining. We've covered a lot of information.
Yep. It's been a pleasure, Chris. Thanks very much for having me.